So a lot of you have been asking about how to deal with hot and cold behavior when you're trying to repair a relationship. And I can totally understand why it can feel confusing, especially if you're seeing progress. It can feel ultra confusing to be like, why do things feel like they're taking like a back step? So in today's video, I'm going to break down how to deal with hot and cold behavior from your partner or your ex-partner. But before we dig into that, I want to jump into the why. You know, I can understand why it can feel really confusing when you're repairing your relationship and you've had some really good moments, some good progress. Suddenly, maybe your partner stops texting for a week or a few weeks, ghosts you. Maybe they're not being as warm, or maybe they've said to you specifically, hey, I actually don't want to talk with you right now. So I can understand why it can feel really confusing and feel a little bit heartbreaking that things have been going so well for so long, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're taking like 2 steps back. So I want to break down how to deal with this behavior, but first of all, I want to help you understand the why. Hot and cold behavior rarely comes from a place of malice. Even when maybe things have been said in a hurtful way or seem like they're coming from an angry place, 99% of the time, it's usually a defense mechanism born out of the friction of the situation. So hot and cold behavior, mixed signals, there's a lot of different phrases that can describe this sort of specific action. But the core, the root of it, ultimately is coming from the same place. It's usually an internal battle that is being played out and kind of spilling out externally. So the first influence on this is what I've spoken about a lot on this channel, which is expectancy bias. So your partner or your ex-partner has a mental script of how you interact. So even if you've started to change and approach the relationship and communication differently, a lot of the time that script is still ingrained in your partner's memory. So they kind of expect old patterns to eventually resurface again. And obviously that specific behavior is different to everyone. Maybe you spoke over your partner, maybe you spoke in logic a lot, maybe you raised your voice, whatever it was. But your partner has this subconsciously at the back of their mind, as we all do. We all have this sort of evidence stored at the back of our minds somewhere, right? So with your partner, when things start to feel warm, things start to feel headed in a good direction, what can happen is an alarm can trigger in their brain. So they can remember times when you have been warm in the past, but their brain will also remind them that it didn't stay like that forever. Things changed, or there was other times sprinkled around that good time that weren't so good, that weren't so warm, and that you did logic them or you did raise your voice, whatever it is. So your partner's brain will trigger an alarm and be like, this is where it usually goes wrong. So this expectancy bias, this expectation that things are going to head in a wrong direction, can lead them to pull back a little bit. And this is what people see as cold behavior, to protect themselves from the, in their mind, inevitable outcome that you're just going to go back to normal. You're going to go back to what you always do. This is the thing that they are expecting. And this is where a lot of people can get caught up, because they can then, in the end, return back to their old behaviors. So again, I'll talk about this in a second, but I just want to kind of leave it there as a mental note for you to start thinking about. But it's not only that influences this sort of hot and cold behavior, it's also the fragility of the space and environment to be able to express your feelings without any negative repercussions. So if you're trying to repair a relationship, if they do feel scared or they do feel worried that you're going to revert back, then they will hold back on telling you the why. They will hold back on saying, hey, I'm enjoying this, but I'm worried that you are going to change. If they just pull back and have this sort of quote unquote cold behavior, then it means that they don't feel safe enough to be able to mention to you, hey, I am worried about this situation. They don't feel the emotional space to be able to express that fear to you. So they choose to not tell you and to simply just pull away. So if they are not feeling a consistent foundation, then any moment of closeness can feel like a trap. And, like I said, they can feel like they need to go cold because they aren't sure if you can handle the truth of their current feelings. And that's really important. This is why it's so important to understand and learn the skills to cultivate that environment, so your partner doesn't feel like they have to pull away. They can simply tell you and express their feelings to you. And again, I won't jump into it all now. I'll jump into it a bit more later on. But again, just something to bear in mind. But the other thing that a lot of people don't realize during this time is that there can be this kind of relief and regret back and forth. If a breakup has happened or there's been a tough time in the relationship, your partner or your ex-partner can feel this sense of relief, this kind of freedom that they don't have to go through that cycle anymore. But as humans, we never feel something 100% of the time, all the time. There can be other moments where maybe they reach out or they see the new you and they're wanting to see how that develops and they're curious. This can be the hot behavior where they experience this wave of regret or nostalgia or curiosity as to who the new you is. So this can be the hot behavior. And when they reach out, they can experience that, but then again, get that worry of, I don't want to get pulled back into that same cycle. So they can pull away again and it can flip back and forth. And this flitting back and forth between the sort of two states can be the thing that throws a lot of people off, because can be the stage of reconciliation where a lot of people worry and then just completely pull away. They just go, well, they're too hot and cold. I'll just give up. They're never going to change their mind. They're always going to see me in one way. And they walk away from a relationship that is being repaired. And this is the biggest shame that I see, is when people experience this back and forth, this hot and cold behavior as the relationship is being repaired, and they choose to walk away from a relationship that is in that process of being repaired. And, like I said, for me, the most heartbreaking thing is, I want to bake a cake, and you make the cake mix and you spend all this time on it, you put it in the oven, and you're constantly watching it rise. But it feels like it's taking forever. So in the end you go, screw it. What's the point in having a cake? It's never going to bake. And you pull the cake out half baked. And all you do is confirm to yourself that there's no point. Cakes can never be baked, but you'll never actually see it through to the point of being baked. That's the saddest thing for me to see, is when people walk away during this moment when it's most important to show how the relationship can be moving forward. So like I mentioned, there can be these kind of subconscious testing of how the relationship is going to be. And these mixed signals are a very low stakes way to see if your changes are real or not, if you are going to go back to your old self, or if their fears are correct or incorrect. And this is why it's so important to make sure that you are continuing to grow and develop the relationship skills that we talk about on this channel, so that your partner doesn't have any evidence that you are going to revert back to your old self, because you are consistent in the growth that you have. And again, if some of the concepts that I talk about here sound a little bit confusing, I talk about the 3 core elements of relationships, why they're so important in order to rebuild a relationship from the ground up. This is where all of my members start. And if you do want to join us, then join that bootcamp. I'll leave a link in the description down below if you want to start that journey today. So this is why it's really important to continue to be consistent. Otherwise, you're going to end up proving your partner or your ex-partner correct in their fears. So then that leaves us, how do you continue to be consistent in your growth? How can you deal with these hot and cold behaviors, master handling these hot and cold behaviors in order to prove that the relationship is able to be headed and led into a strong direction? So the very first step is making sure that you are staying strong in your changes. So this is avoiding the victim mindset that we talk about on this channel. As of right now, if your partner isn't 100% ready to reconcile with you, being able to not feel like a victim or feel like you're being led along, trust takes time to be rebuilt. You're going to ultimately create a scenario that is your biggest fear in this situation. So getting rid of this victim mindset is really, really important. But it's not only that, it's also starting to build the evidence both for your partner and for yourself. So as the relationship is repairing, a lot of people get stuck into this idea of following the outcomes. So if you're just following hot and cold behavior and you're judging that as progress or not progress, you're going to constantly be pulled around by the situation. One minute you're going to be motivated because you're like, oh, she loves me again, or he loves me again. Another moment you're going to be like, oh, well, what's the point? Because they're not talking to me this week, so what's the point? You're going to get pulled around by these short-term outcomes rather than looking at the long-term picture. But it's not only that. Being able to validate your partner's feelings as to why they may feel hot and cold with you right now. So actually being able to lean into the friction. This is why getting rid of the victim mindset is going to be so helpful here, because it will allow you to be able to more genuinely lean in and validate your partner's feelings. So if they do pull away after a warm moment, or they have stopped speaking to you for a couple of weeks, being able to acknowledge it and validating it without judging it is going to be really, really important. So for example, and this is not a script, but this is just as an example of a way to validate this. I can understand that things may feel a little bit heavy right now, or maybe a little bit confusing. There's moments where maybe you feel like I've changed, but I think if I were in your shoes, I would also be really worried that things are just going to go back to exactly the way things were. That horrible cycle that was just constant in the relationship. I think if I were you, I could understand why you may not be comfortable speaking with me right now. But I just want to let you know that, and I want to make sure that you have whatever space you need in order to deal with this. I'm still here, and maybe I'll reach out again in a couple of weeks and we can sort of catch up then. Let me know your thoughts. So in this way, you're leaning into it, you're acknowledging it without judgment, but you're also providing a potential solution to this current situation. So you're suggesting, hey, maybe you need some space, but I could be off, let me know. In this way, you're being able to lean into it. You're not leaving this hanging in the air. You're actually providing a potential solution that could help the situation long term. But one of the most important things during this time is making sure that you are lowering the stakes. A lot of people get into this mindset of there has to be this constant pressure and talk about the relationship. Are we getting back together? Or how are we going to get back together? What's the path forward? I've actually done a deeper dive video on this, on why it's so important to not constantly bombard with the talk of the relationship. Lowering the stakes with you and your partner and allowing your changes to be very self-evident. So when conversations come up, the logistical conversations, keep them about the logistics. But being able to lean into emotional conversations without it having to be about the relationship. Being able to show that you can have conversations that aren't all centered about the relationship. You're showing your partner that interacting with you is safe and doesn't lead to constant high pressure conversations where they feel like they need to make a decision on whether they're with you or not with you. This is one of the most important things, is that a relationship is implied through your changes. If you're constantly bombarding them with the question or conversation of like, why aren't we back together? Here's how much I've changed, or showing off, you're trying to prove your point. All it does is add pressure on them to make a decision that they are not ready to make yet. And this is so important, because you don't need to have conversations about the relationship to be able to repair the relationship. So many people get this confused. So I'll leave you with that deeper dive video, and I will see you over there.